If you do have questions, drop them in the chat. I'll make sure to keep checking that throughout the session here. Cool. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to start on by talking about dashboards today. So dashboards within DataDog, there tends to be some misconceptions about what exactly dashboards do within DataDog. So I kind of want to clear those up really quickly. Dashboards are made to present you information within the platform. You are not going to be able to alert off of these. You can't set, you can't send people messages from dashboards, anything like that. These are strictly just kind of a place where you can put a group of metrics or statistics to get a better idea of what's going on inside of an environment, an application, a service, whatever it may be. And I'll kind of show you that as we kind of go through here. But where I wanted to start was on the dashboard list page, which is essentially just a list of every single dashboard that you have within your account. So you can see here that in the middle of the page, we just have a list of all dashboards, pretty straightforward. But the one thing that I wanted to point out to you is over here on the left-hand side, you'll have a couple of preset lists. You can see that we have a number of them right here. But the one that I specifically wanted to point out was the all integrations preset. Now, I currently have it starred, so it's going to be in my favorites list, but this should still be in the preset list down here for you if you haven't started already. And basically, what this list shows you is all of the dashboards that we provide for you out of the box within DataDog. So essentially what I'm trying to get at here is that when you install an integration or use a particular tool within the DataDog platform, we provide you with a dashboard out of the box from that tool or integration. Now, as far as the integrations that actually produce these dashboards, there's a lot of them. Basically, it's any any integration that produces metrics, which if you're familiar with DataDog at all, you'll know that there are a lot of different integrations within DataDog, probably around 450 at this point, probably around 425 of them, close to like 98% of them or whatever, something like that, that all produce metrics. Now, in addition to that, the tools that will produce metrics or dashboards rather are not going to be all of them. They're going to be a very finite number of tools within the DataDog organization, not infrastructure or APM or logs. But you can see here, RUM produces a few dashboards: network device monitoring, network performance monitoring, security monitoring. These all produce out of the box dashboards for you. Now, the reason why it's important to mention these out-of-the-box dashboards is because these can be used as a jumping-off point. You can't actually edit these dashboards initially. You have to clone them, and then once they are cloned, you can edit them. But the idea here is that these dashboards will give you kind of a point to begin when you initially install them and you have nothing else within your DataDog account. Now, once you've spent some time within the product, you'll obviously want to start to build your own dashboards. And so for that, I've opened up a dashboard here that we have built for the purposes of demoing. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can kind of see everything that's going on this page. But basically, this is an application and infrastructure overviews. You can see in the top left just by the name. And you can see that we have kind of three distinct categories here: metrics, traces, and logs, in terms of what we are looking at on this dashboard. Now, I'm not necessarily going to go over everything that we're seeing on here. There's obviously a lot to go over. Just note that there are a number of different widgets that you actually have the ability to apply to the dashboard itself. So let me zoom back in here. And if I click edit dashboard at the top here, you can see we actually have a list that pulls out from the right-hand side that actually gives us all of the different widgets that we're able to use. You have the graphing section here, which is going to be basically the most straightforward section. You have, of course, a number of different widgets here. A couple that are notable, are going to be the geomap, the distribution charts, and the funnel graph. These are probably the ones that you won't see in a lot of other places within DataDog. These are going to be super useful to you, depending on what exactly it is you're trying to do. But just know that these are here and available for you. You also have the decorative and annotative widgets, just notes or images or free text, whatever it may be. These are more just like organizational than anything. You have your alerting widgets. I don't like how this is named alerting because these, as I mentioned before, you cannot get alerts on this particular, or like on dashboards. These widgets are specifically in place to give you information about alerts rather than the alerts themselves, right? So for example, the monitor summary here, if I just drag this over to show you what it looks like real quick, it basically gives you a list of all of the different monitors that you have within your account and what state they are in. You can see that you actually have the ability to query for a specific set of monitors. So if you have a bunch of monitors that are tagged, and I'll get into how to do this when we actually talk about monitors a little bit later in the talk, but you have the ability to query for a set of monitors and then specifically look at the number of monitors that are in each state based off of that particular query. You then have your event-based data. This is going to be kind of your logs, APM, event widgets. Specifically, the log stream is going to be specific to logs, obviously. The service map and service summary, these are going to be specific to APM tools. And the event stream and event timeline are obviously going to be for DataDog events. Awesome. So now that we've kind of gone over that, let me get out of this. Let me discard changes. Cool. So a couple of other things to note about dashboards. If you were to build your, start to build your own dashboard. So if we go up here to the top right and click new dashboard, you'll see that we have a few different options when we actually click on the new dashboard button. Now, the two dashboards that you see over here on the right-hand side, Timeboard and Screenboard, these are kind of our legacy dashboards. They've been around since the beginning of DataDog. They each have their own individual use cases. However, we recently introduced this third kind of dashboard that doesn't have a name. It's just called dashboard. However, for the purposes of this call, I'm just going to refer to this other kind of dashboard as a dream board. That's what we've referred to it as internally for some time. But the idea here and what I'm trying to get at is that this dream board does exactly what both the time board and the screen board do individually. Now, I'm not going to get into exactly what that is in great detail, but to kind of summarize here, a time board is used to correlate different sets of metrics together through time correlation. And a screen board is used to get a view into a particular environment, that you are looking at. And a dream board is going to combine both of the benefits of those dashboards into one dashboard. So moving forward, don't use a time board or a screen board. Just use the dream board over here on the left-hand side. It's just going to be easier. You're not going to have to worry about any of the limitations that you would get using either of these other dashboards. Now, once you've actually gone ahead and start to build your dashboard out, there are a few things that I can mention here to make that a little bit easier for you. So when you're starting to build out a dashboard, obviously you probably have something in mind as to what you want that dashboard to be in reference to, right? Whether it be, like your infrastructure, an application, a service, just like kind of like a general holistic view into something, those sorts of things. But chances are that we already have a query of some kind on one of our dashboards that we've built for you that will be useful to you on the board that you're starting to build. And so the question is, how can we make this easier for our customers to build those dashboards? Well, the answer is really, really simple. And that's just that there's a copy and paste feature. If I were to go to another dashboard here, so if I go to my dashboard list and, I go to my AWS overview dashboard here, there's a number of different things on here that I could potentially find useful, right? We have our EBS volumes up here, our EBLs or ELBs rather. We have ELB requests per second graph. We have this ELB latency. Maybe this latency is something that I really, really want to use on the dashboard. So all I have to do is just hover over the dashboard and hit Command C. Or if you're on Windows, Control C. And you can see up here at the top that we actually copied this widget to a clipboard. And what this allows for me to do is I can hop over to my other dashboard. I can edit it. I can scroll down to an empty space and I hit Command V. You can see that we now have this widget available to us on this board. And this is going to be super, super useful for building out these dashboards very, very quickly. For the sake of just, keeping this board the same, I'm going to discard this change. But the idea is essentially the same, throughout any other dashboard or any other widget. It's also worth mentioning that if you can copy multiple widgets, and when you do, you can open up your clipboard down here at the bottom, and you can select all or select a few specific widgets, and then you can select to add them to an existing dashboard or just put them onto a new board as well. You can also dump these into a notebook or an incident. A notebook is basically just a much more simplistic version of a dashboard that I would say is more suited for individual use as opposed to a dashboard, which is more suited for, the use by a team or an organization, right? Cool. Awesome. So a few other things to note about dashboards. Up here in the top right-hand corner, if you click on this cog, you can actually generate a shared URL for the dashboard. Anyone who clicks on this link will be able to see the information on the board, but they won't be able to change or edit anything. Essentially, it'll provide them read-only access to the board. In addition to that, you can see you also have the ability to clone any dashboard, not just an out-of-the-box one. So if this dashboard was something you wanted to generate another board for, just slightly tweaked, you can just clone the board and then change it from there as you see fit. The last thing to talk about here in terms of dashboards is going to be these template variables up here at the top. Now, template variables are extraordinarily useful in dashboards. And the reason why I say that is because essentially what these allow for me to do is switch contexts on the board so that I can go from viewing, one service in a particular region, in a particular environment, to viewing an entirely different service in a different region, in a different environment, right? And so what you can see here is at the top, actually, I'll use the AWS overview dashboard for this, but you can see up here at the top, we have account as one of our variables, we have region, and we have scope. If I wanted to see only information related to one particular region, all I'd have to do is just click on the dropdown. I can do US West, like 2, right? And I can click on that. And you'll note that every single widget on the board is going to update to show me a different set of information than what it was before. Now, in this particular case, it doesn't look like there's a lot of data, if any at all, coming from the US West 2. Again, I can click on a different one here, and you'll note that, again, all of the widgets are going to update to show me that particular set of data coming from the AP Northeast 2 region. And so basically what I'm trying to get at here is that if you set up these template variables correctly, you have the ability to quickly swap context on a board to show a very specific set of information. So instead of needing to create an individual dashboard for each region, each version, each environment, each service, each AWS account, you can create one dashboard and then switch and mix and match all those different tags together so that you can see instead of creating 5, 7, 10 different dashboards, you just have one dashboard that you can quickly switch the context for and get all the information that you want to find. Awesome. So that's pretty much everything I had for dashboards. Outside of that, there's not really much else to talk about in terms of like the building of dashboards. I would say that, if you all are interested in kind of getting a more in-depth look into dashboards or perhaps hands-on, we do have our learning center here, learn.datadoghq.com. And we do have a dashboards class called Building Better Dashboards. This will kind of walk you through the actual construction of a dashboard and kind of go over some of the concepts that I've talked about today. I will drop this in the chat for everyone just in case anyone wants to take a closer look at that. There's also a lot of other different courses on here that I recommend looking through as well, including monitoring and synthetics, which we're going to go over in a few minutes here as well. Perfect. Awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any questions, so I'm going to keep plugging along here. Cool. So now let's talk about monitors. So monitors within Datadog are something that have obviously been around for a very long time. And it's also very much kind of a core concept in Datadog, right? Being a observability and monitoring platform, it's important to us that our customers are actually able to be alerted on specific sets of data that they want to be. Now, we can see here, just by the list of all the different types of monitors we have, that there's a lot of different stuff that you're able to do. I'm not going to go over all of them. There are a few that I will specifically call out here. Before I do, though, Freddie, do you know what plan everyone is on here? Specifically, are they on Pro Plus or Enterprise?
They are on a drawdown on Pro Plus.
Okay, cool. So the reason why I ask that is because there are certain monitor types that may or may not be available to you depending on what plan you go with us. And since you're using the Pro Plus plan, that means you have access to all the different monitors that you see here, all the different monitor types. So I'll quickly go over the monitor types that aren't straightforward, just by the name of them, and also ones that you are going to have access to based off of your plan. So the first is going to be anomaly detection. This is one of our 2 machine learning monitors. This essentially takes into account seasonal, day of the week, and time of day pattern, and it creates this gray range for you, as you can see over here on the right-hand side. When the metric deviates from outside of that range, we can send you an alert on that. The second is outlier. This is our second machine learning monitor. And basically what this does is it looks at a group of metrics. And when one metric deviates far enough away from the group, we can send you an alert on that. Additionally, we also have forecast monitoring. This is not machine learning. However, it can look like it, but basically the idea here is that you set a threshold, and when the metric that you have within the monitor appears as though it's going to break the threshold in a given amount of time, we send you an alert before the threshold is actually broken. So you can kind of jump out ahead of issues before they begin, so to speak. And the final one I'll talk about here is composite monitoring. This essentially allows you to apply Boolean logic to multiple monitors so that you can, say you have 5 monitors and you know that there's only an issue when all 5 are alerting at the same time. Instead of waiting to get an alert from each one of those individual monitors and kind of correlate and get them together to make sure they're all alerting together, you can set up a composite and say when A, B, C, D, and E monitors are all alerting at the same time, I only want to get 1 alert. And so this can help you cut back on alert fatigue that you might be hearing from 50 different monitors going off, only correlating to a few different issues that you might have. Cool. It looks like we have a chat here. Let me make sure it's let me see if it's a question. What are the main differences between anomaly and outlier? Both look the same, looks for the same purposes. Outliers for a group of metrics, while that will not so outliers, essentially, I have a group of metrics and they should all be within a certain deviation from one another, right? So this visualization is really good for that. You can see that the metric outline in red kind of stays with the group and then deviates far away from the group. That's what an outlier is. An anomaly, you don't need a group for the deviation. It's just we believe that the metric should stay within this range. And when it does it, we can send you an alert on that. So yeah, I hope that clears things up. It's mainly just the number of metrics that are in the monitor itself. Cool. So one last thing to talk about here before we actually jump into a monitor, and I'll show you how to set one of these up, is the recommended monitors tab up here at the top. The recommended monitors is essentially going to be a list of crowdsourced queries that either DataDog uses internally or come from existing customers that we have in our that use our software that essentially use these queries to monitor some of their data within DataDog. Now, it's worth mentioning that since these are crowdsourced, they are not specific to your account. So when you or if you decide to use these recommended monitors, just note that these should be, these are here for you to turn on and kind of start monitoring things, without needing to really think about it. However, you should also be aware that these are not specific to your account, right? Like if I turn on this Kafka monitor, I should go into the actual query and make sure that it's kind of relevant to what I'm looking for, right? I should make sure that, all of the thresholds match what I'm looking for and all of that sort of stuff. The query is exactly what I want to find. It's broken down by all the things that I want to break it down by, that sort of stuff, right? So just note that that is something to look out for when you're using these recommended monitors. However, we do have a lot of recommended monitors here, and this is a great way to kind of just go in and turn on something to have alerts set up. If you are, you turn on DataDog day one and you have nothing to do in terms of monitoring, this is a great place to start. So let's back over to custom monitors here, and I'm actually going to click into a metric monitor and show you all how to set one of these up. So wait for it to load here. Cool. So we click into a monitor and this is what we get. The first thing we need to do is we need to choose a detection method. So in this particular case, you can see that we have 5 options. When we say metric monitor, that's really just how we want to go about presenting the information, right? So we're presenting the information as a metric, but the detection method is going to be based off whatever I select here. So you can see that anomaly, outlier, and forecast are all technically metric monitors. They're just different detection methods. We also have the change alert, which essentially just detects the change of a metric over a given period of time. But I'm going to stick with threshold, mostly because this is the most common type of monitor that we have within DataDog, and it's also most straightforward. So we'll stick with the threshold method for right now. And now let's select a metric. So I'm going to pick one that's very simple. We can choose system.cpu.system. Cool. We can see where that metric falls currently. In the from section here, this is essentially just going to determine scope. So I could put something in here like env prod, right? So that it's only going to be looking at values coming from our prod environment. And then the average by, I'm going to put, let's do region, right? And so basically what this is telling me is that each one of these individual metrics that we are seeing in this monitor is the system.cpu.system metric coming from the prod environment broken down by each region. So each one of these metrics is a different region that is reporting this metric from within our prod environment. Now I can go ahead and I can start to set some alert conditions. So we can say trigger when the metric is above or equal to the threshold at least once during the last 30 minutes for any region, right? And so now I can set an alert threshold. I can say alert is going to be 40%. We can see exactly where that falls relative to the metrics we currently have. And then warning threshold is 35%, which again, we can see exactly where that falls relative to our metrics that we currently have. Awesome. So now that I've done that, let's start to notify our team. So the say what's happening section down here is obviously going to be the place where you're going to send messages to people or your alert messages, right? However, I am going to open up this tooltip on the right hand side. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's 2 specific sections that I want to point out. The first is going to be the variables. You can see here that we have a region.name variable within this particular monitor. And this variable is directly coming from whatever is in the average by here. So if I were to go ahead and add availability zone in, you'll note that in the templates, we now have, or in the tooltip, we now have availability zone.name available to us as a variable, as well as the region.name. Now, it's worth mentioning that when we do add the availability zone in here, we also add metrics to our graph up here at the top, because now we're not only breaking this metric down by each region, we're breaking it down by each availability zone. So this spike you see right here, you can see there's an availability zone tag applied to it. So you can add additional things to the average by here for the sake of just getting the, just getting the variable. However, you are going to be alerted based off of that particular tag as well. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to remove the availability zone tag here, just that we only have one variable to work with. And we're only seeing the different region averages up here at the top. Now, what I can do is I can use that variable, that region.name, in our message or title, or I should say message and or title of our monitor here. So I can say CPU is too high in region.name. And now right here in the title, I will know which region is the culprit for the high CPU when I get a message from this particular monitor. Awesome. So the second category I want to point out to you here are the conditional statements. And the reason why these conditional statements are so important is because these will allow you to send different messages to people or places depending on how the monitor is evaluating. So for example, I could say is warning. So if this monitor falls into a warning state, I'm going to get an email about this. So I can tag myself. We can also tag my boss who needs to know about this, right? We can add a little message. If I can spell, this might be bad. Right. However, if it's an alert, so if this monitor evaluates to an alert, right? So if any of these metrics jump above 40%, I don't need to be alerted or emailed, but Thor does still, so we can tag him. And then we can also take this opportunity to alert Slack channels, right? So Slack in here somewhere. PagerDuty, MS Teams, ServiceNow, OpsGenie. These are all options for you. We have a number of different kind of like third-party messaging systems that you can use here. So yeah, you can kind of see, and then you can say another little message. Hey, this is broken. Fix me. Cool. So now we kind of have a little bit of flow going. If it's a warning, Thor and I are going to get an email along with this little message. However, if it actually falls into an alert state, Slack, PagerDuty, and MS Teams are all going to get pinged at, I don't know, 3:30 in the morning, whatever time is most inconvenient for you all, right? Thor is also going to get that email, and we're also going to get this individual message down here saying, hey, this is broken, fix me. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this is not the only information you're going to get when you get a message from this monitor. You'll also get a screenshot showing you exactly where the threshold is broken, relevant to all the metrics in said monitor. You also get a link to this monitor as well, so you can take a closer look at exactly what's going on. So you're not just going to get a message or anything like that. It'll give you some context as to exactly what's happening, when you get that message. Awesome. So that's pretty much everything I had for monitors. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So let's go ahead and jump over and start talking about synthetics. So synthetics is something that's been around in Datadog for probably like 2 years now, probably more than that. It's probably closer to 3 years. I'm not really sure. Time has flown by very, very quickly. But basically, you can see up here in the top left all the different types of tests that we have. Now, I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm only going to be going over browser and HTTP tests today, just because these are far and away our two most used types of synthetic tests. But just note that when I talk about synthetic tests, these also fall under the monitors category. So the reason why I say that is because if we hop back over to our dashboard, if we were to edit the dashboard and use one of these alerting widgets, you have the ability to apply synthetic monitors to these alerting graphs. So it's not just based off of quote unquote monitors within Datadog. You can also use synthetic tests in here as well, because technically they are monitors. We just categorize them differently in terms of the name, right? So just note that these synthetic monitors can be applied to each of these as well, with the exception of the SLO summary, I believe. The SLO summary is something that, with SLOs in Datadog, you can generate SLOs based off of the monitors. So you're going to get that information in there anyway if you're using your synthetics for SLOs. However, I digress. So for the synthetics page here, obviously this is the landing page. You can see that we have a bunch of searchable facets over here on the left-hand side. A lot of these are generated for you automatically when you create the test. If you're the creator, you'll get tagged. If the regions that you're running the test from will get tagged here. If it's live or paused, you'll see that as well. But the rest of these are essentially tags that you're going to apply directly to each individual test. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But let's jump into one of these tests here. So we're going to start by looking at an HTTP test or an API test. And this is the landing page of the test after it's run for a little while. And I'll come back to this. We're going to actually look at the test details first so I can show you how to set one of these up. So when we go to set up an HTTP test, it's worth noting that you are going to have to pick a URL, right, along with a method. So in this particular case, you can see that we are testing an API endpoint for our Shopist application, and we are using a get method. And basically, that's the info we put in here under URL. You can see we have some advanced options in terms of request options, authentication, query params, request body, and certificate. We also have proxies and privacy information in here as well, if you want to put that in. Next, you go ahead and you name the test, which is not really important, but in case you want to give it something specific so it's recognizable, you can do that. Then beneath that, you have these two tag sections. The first tag section is specifically for ENV, and the second one is just for additional tags. Now, it's worth mentioning that while there is a dropdown here of tags that you can see, you don't necessarily need to use any of the tags from the dropdown. You can tag these however you want. So I can do ENV Davis if I wanted to, or ENV, just followed by like whatever it is I want. And you can see that it's just going to apply that tag there. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend sticking with, tags that you have within your environment, specifically for ENV. However, when we get to the additional tags, this is where I would put in any really tags that you want, right? Again, you have the dropdown that kind of gives you a list of all the different tags that you have already within your account. But again, you can do any tags that you want to apply to it, right? And these tags are what's going to translate over into those kind of searchable checkboxes on the left-hand side of that synthetics page. So if you want to be able to quickly search for a group of synthetics tests, you want to make sure that all of those tests that you're looking for are tagged with the same tag, if that makes sense. Just beneath that, we then have our assertions that we are going to define for the test itself. Now, you can see here that there's a few different assertions that you can apply: response time, status code, header, and there's also body in here as well. Those are our only 4 assertions that you can actually use, but you can kind of see exactly what they do here pretty easily. There's not much mystery behind this. One thing I will note is that if you are just starting out and you don't have any assertions, you can actually click this test URL button. And what this is going to do is it's actually just going to ping the endpoint with the method that you have. And it will actually give you a few things. The first of which is the request preview and response preview over here on the left-hand side. And the other things that it will give you are some assertions that passed, from that particular test. So you can see here, response time is less than 2,000 milliseconds. Status code is 200. Header content type is text / HTML, whatever the rest of this is, char set, whatever, right? And so you can use this as a jumping off point. You can say, all right, we just tested this URL. This is what passed. We can use this moving forward. Or, of course, you can tweak this in any way that you feel is necessary. Then moving further down the page here, you have your locations. These are essentially a set of managed locations that we provide for you out of the box. Currently, we have 15 locations that are all AWS oriented, 5 in Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe, respectively. You can also see that we have this new Azure instance down here for Virginia. This is something that we're looking to do more of. We're trying to expand away from just using AWS. We've gotten a lot of feature requests for this. So look in the future for more Azure instances and potentially other, outside of Azure and AWS, we could potentially be adding more kind of services as well. So keep an eye out for those. Another thing to mention is that we also have these things called private locations. And private locations essentially allow you to run tests from within your own environment or within your own network without actually exposing whatever it is you're testing to the open internet, right? So it could be like an internal endpoint or something along the lines of that you're using for an internal tool that not everyone has access to. You can actually use these private locations to run that particular test from inside essentially a Docker container and send that information back up to Datadog. You then have your specified test frequency here, pretty straightforward. And then you have your defined alert conditions, which essentially allow you to specify when you get alerted, right? So essentially, if you don't want to be alerted after one test fail, you can change this to retry the test a few times before it actually submits as a failure. Then you have your notify your team section, which functions the exact same way as the monitors that I just showed you. Once that's done, you save the test. Once you have information flowing into your flowing in from that test, you'll see that you have this landing page here. It provides you with all this great information about the test, including test results, which you can go ahead and you can click into and get kind of a waterfall graph of information behind this particular test result, including if you are using APM, you have the ability to connect traces to your API tests. So you can see exactly what was occurring kind of on the back end during the time of the API test being called. Kind of gives you, that connection towards the rest of your application, right, within Datadog. Awesome. The next type of test to talk about is going to be our browser tests. And browser tests within Datadog are essentially testing the user's flow through an application that you have within the, within your product. So again, this is the landing page. I'll go over this in a second, but let's jump over to test details here so I can show you how to set one of these up. The setup is basically going to be exactly the same for browser tests as it was for API tests. The only difference here going to be that instead of the assertions, you're going to have these browser and devices selections to have. So basically, what you're going to do is you're going to select your browser type and your device type, kind of in a cross section. You can see Edge, Firefox, and Chrome are all currently available. Internet Explorer 11 is currently in beta, should be available pretty soon. The managed locations and the private locations are exactly the same. The test frequency is the same as well. You have those alert conditions, which again are the same as what we were just seeing on the API test. And then you have your notify your team section here, which again, exactly the same as what we were seeing before. But the biggest difference here between API and browser tests is going to be the next step, which is the recording. And essentially, the recording is going to be you going through your application and basically giving a step-by-step process as to what you want to test on your website. So a lot of our customers use this for logging in or logging out. If they're e-commerce, they test purchasing things along those lines, right? But you can kind of see over here, you have all these 12 recorded steps. If I hit start recording and I start clicking around, you can see that additional steps will get added onto the actual list that I have at the bottom here. Now I'm actually just going to delete these just to keep this test up and running correctly. But the idea here is that you have a lot of different things you're able to do. You can see that we have all these different types of assertions. You can insert an element's contents on a page. You can test downloads. You can test emails received. You can test an element is present. You have navigations, special actions like click, hover, scroll. You have variables you can input here so that if you're testing logins, you don't have to expose any sensitive information like passwords. You can add subtests. So you can add browser tests into a browser test so that instead of needing to create, 5 different tests, going through an entire kind of story, you can create sub stories and then just add those tests on. You can also add HTTP tests in here as well. Once this is all done, you would save and quit, and it brings you over to a page that looks very, very similar to what we were seeing before, kind of the landing page for our browser tests here. The biggest difference between the API and the browser test is that you are going to have these individual steps that you can actually see for the browser tests, including any errors, resources, and traces that are connected to this particular step on this particular page. Again, kind of giving you a more holistic view of exactly what's happening across all of Datadog as opposed to just your browser tests here. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the browser tests. One thing I will note for everyone is that the way we go about charging for these tests is not based off of how many times this test as a whole runs. It's based off of the locations. So if I have this test running, and there were, it says here there are 14 locations, right? So if I had this set to run every 15 minutes like we do here, after 30 minutes, I would know that I would be charged for 28 test runs, because each every 15 minutes there's going to be one test run per 14 locations, right? So we a test run is based off the location, not the overall test itself. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of going through here and building out these tests, in case pricing is something that you need to keep in mind. Perfect. I still don't see any questions in here, so we're going to keep plugging along. That was pretty much it for synthetics. And the last thing, or was that all there to talk about today? I feel like there might have been one other thing. Let me check here. No, actually, that was it. I was going to say perhaps rum, but I think rum is saved for our next session here. So yeah, that was pretty much all I had for today's session. Are there any questions that anyone has? You can feel free to drop those questions in the chat. Or I guess at this point, people can start unmuting and asking questions if that's a little bit easier. All right. It doesn't seem like there's any questions. I'll keep an eye on the chat here just in case anyone's finishing up typing or anything. But in that case, I will pass it back over to Freddie.
Awesome. Thank you, Davis. So yeah, if moving forward, if anyone on the Nextiva team has any questions, please feel free to email me. You can get my email from Robbie. He has my email address. Also, for any tickets or anything that you submit to, or any support tickets that you submit, please always feel free to CC me in those tickets, just so that I am able to escalate as needed. Same if there's any like one-off questions, please feel free to reach out to me personally. You don't have to go through Robbie. So with that being said, Robbie, do you have any final questions? Anything else that you want me to discuss?
No, I think it was a great presentation. Thank you very much, both Freddie and David.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Yeah, and like I said, we still need to schedule that third session. More than likely, it won't happen until the first week of December. So when you get a chance, Robbie, you can send me the availability for that week, and I can get that ready and scheduled for everyone.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a good day.